Hello and welcome back to Blue Tinted Glasses for, I was going to say another episode of Good Morning Foxes, but I've actually called it Bad Morning Foxes. So it's the first episode of Bad Morning Foxes. I can't believe we've not had more of them actually this season. Of course, yesterday we watched Newcastle absolutely thump Leicester City 4-0. So what better way to start your Sunday morning than listening to it all over again? I'm so sorry. We're joined by Nil, of course, as always, and Kate. Kate, how you doing?
Morning. Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Nil, mate, what's going on? How was your Saturday after the match?
Depressing because normally I watch the game back again to do some tactical analysis, and that was not particularly fun. In fact, I would go as far as saying that's probably even worse than some of the games we saw under Steve Cooper. And I thought those days were behind us, Locks. What's going on?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. So let's start off with that question. Was it the worst? Was it the worst performance of the season, Kate?
No, Arsenal was the worst performance for me.
Really?
The performance yesterday was a very average first half. And then obviously we just capitulated in those 15 minutes in the second half. So it wasn't the worst performance, no, because I feel like against Arsenal, we actually had a fairly strong team out. And I didn't have high hopes going into this game with the midfield as it was, because the core of the team had just been cut out and it was always going to be difficult anyway. I thought Gordon might have a good game against JJ and he did. So yeah, it's not the worst I've seen this season, which is probably a bit worrying, but it's definitely up there. But I feel like Rude's now seen the depth or lack of in our squad, and he's got to go back to the drawing board. Top's got to get his checkbook out as well in January. And there's some accountability to be held with the players as well, because I feel like there was some lack of concentration and a poor mentality approaching that game, particularly with the second half.
Yeah, I mean, Anil, do you, we spoke before the game all week really about who would come in for Samari, who would come in for Ndidi. I think most of us did say Skip and Hamza, that it would probably be them because they're the most like for like. I mean, what did you make to them two in particular? Because I thought Skip was okay. I thought Hamza was horrific. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what did you make to them?
I thought that too, but watching the game back again, I think Skip just gets progressively worse as the game goes on and is completely absent really in the second half. I've seen he's been the subject of quite a lot of vitriol online, but I think it's fairly warranted. I think we've always said this all season long. If he'd like come through the academy or he'd been like a fairly cheap signing, I don't think anyone would have a problem. But 20 million when finances are tight for a player like that, they've got to be producing, the price tag isn't his fault, but we as the fans, expecting someone to come in and make a big impact. Like, if anything, of course, we already signed him previously, but Samare is having the impact that a player of that sort of money should be having. So, yeah, I thought they were both poor. I mean, look, to be fair to what Kate said, I see what you're saying, which is that, like, yes, it was a poor performance, but if you're starting with essentially the Primark version of the Leicester City 11, rather than, Waitrose finest, what do you expect? Which is true. But the thing is that the excuses are gone, right? You can't hide behind we don't like the manager anymore. The capitulation was just really awful to see. Losing our head so quickly. There's a lot to dislike about that performance.
Yeah, Kate, obviously, just whilst we're talking about Skip, I mean, what did you make to him? Because I've tried to kind of defend him, or I suppose give him a bit of benefit of the doubt all season, saying that, well, it's not his fault he was £20 million or £25 million, but I mean, he's not had a great game for us yet, has he? He's not had a really good game, I don't think. He's had okay games and good games, but and also on top of that, maybe do you think he is just the kind of player that looked good at Spurs with some quality players around him, and then when he's shoved into the middle of a mess like he was yesterday, there's really not much he can do?
I think it's a bit of everything. I thought the early part of the season when he was getting more minutes, I thought he looked a really industrial, covered loads of ground. His fitness looked great. I don't think he was going to set any worlds on fire or pull any trees up, so to speak. But I thought as a partnership with Winks, it could work quite well. I don't think we've seen anything in his passing ability or his ability to turn and create But that's fine. If that's what Winks can do, or even Yannick can do at times, that's okay. But as the season's gone on, obviously he's not got any minutes per se. But I find him always in a load of space. And if he's always in a load of space, when we've not got the ball, it means someone else is in a load of space. And that guy was Joe Linton yesterday. And he was just dominating, really. And I don't think Skip really has enough direction to control the middle. I think if Wilf or Samare had been there, Skip perhaps would have been okay. But because Skip had a poor partner in Hamza as well, you were kind of looking like Anil said there, like two Primark versions of what we're used to. I wouldn't go as far as to say Samari and Wilf are Waitrose finest. I think it's very much in progress, but it's certainly a drop below the level that we're used to. But Skip, for me, just finds space all the time out of possession, and he's just marking shadows and chasing shadows, and there's no feeling there that you've got a reinforcement, is there really?
I mean, Anil, we love to take advantage of hindsight and criticize managers on the back of it. It's just what football fans do. Was Rude wrong to not start Facundo Buonanotte?
I mean, hindsight, you probably have to say yes, but I don't think that's the reason why we lost the game. I think we lost the game in the back six, really, and we didn't really have a sniff up front. So, you know, what difference is that change going to make? Do I think if we start with Buonanotte, we don't lose 4-0? Not really, to be honest with you. I think it would be equally grim.
Yeah, Kate, what do you make to it? Do you think Buonanotte should have started, or?
I think he has been arguably our best player. Excuse me. But then at the same time, I think Bilal has come on and on and on. And if it was between the two of them, then he picked the right decision, because at the end of the day, Bilal is ours and we own him, and we will own him after this season. So we want to progress that type of player. I feel like there was a lot of drum banging about Mavididi starting, and I'm hoping that that's now put to bed, because he is just not worth a start at the moment. But yeah, I agree with Anil. We didn't lose it because of that choice. But what I would have liked to have seen from Rude, and to be fair to Rude, he would have wanted to see how Hamza and Skip properly cut it. And the short answer is they didn't. But on another day, I would have liked to have seen now him bring Cartwright on, because you know what Hamza's like, you know the capacity of Hamza, and you know the capacity of Skip. So I would have liked to have seen someone like Cartwright come on. But then I heard Rude in this post-match interview say that it wouldn't have been fair to bring a guy on like that with that kind of scoreline up against him. And he would know better than that. He would know better than me what it would do to a player to come on at 4-0 to make your debut and it just feel a bit shit. So next time round, I'm hoping if there's that problem, if there's that hole, if there's those injury problems or bans in the middle, he might just take a punt on Henry, because we know the capacity of the other two, and then it's not quite what we need.
Yeah, I mean, just a comment here from JB. Why am I hearing people have a go at Steffi when how can he have an impact the way we started? I mean, we started okay. It wasn't terrible first half, was it? He had chance, you know, he could have made an impact in the first half. I think, especially in the last, the last 5 minutes of that first half. I mean, we looked to scare them a little bit. I thought going into half time, okay, yeah, if we have a similar second half to the last 5 minutes, we could do something here. And then obviously we all know what happened after that. Just on Mavididi, Anil. Chips did say, to be honest, never felt confident in Mavididi. I don't think it's just a confidence thing. I don't think he's prem quality. Now, I'm kind of on the fence with that comment a little bit. I think he's got a lot of quality, but it's just very rarely shown. Obviously, in the Championship, he was able to show it a lot more naturally because you're up against worse players. But what's your take now on? Again, you know, on Mavididi after seeing that game, because I think Kate said, you know, he hasn't done anything now to warrant another start.
Yeah, I think the thing with him is, if you're being honest, is we've signed him when we're in the Championship. So if he was Premier League quality, why did the Premier League team not sign him? Right now, of course, Leicester City were a bit of a weird one in that essentially they were a Premier League team that were in the Championship, if that makes sense. Which is why, for example, we were able to sign players like Harry Winks and Connor Cody, who you'd think would easily be able to get a Premier League club. Not maybe a top club, it would maybe be one of the bottom 5 ones, but they would be able to get it. So I think that's what we're seeing with Mavididi. He's somewhere in between top end of the Championship, bottom end of the Premier League. That's what you've got. How much did he cost us? Something like 8 million or something like that. I think if you look at it in the context of things, he's probably performing to about that standard. I think the issue is we probably need a bit better than that to really stay up. I was hopeful that last year the thing is, I think it was very inconsistent last year too. He, could have like an amazing game, then have a really below average one. I actually thought, despite him being younger, Fatawa was generally more consistent with his performances, that even in the sort of average Abdul performances, he was still pretty good. And of course, he had the spectacular ones. So, yeah, look, I think you get what you pay for, right? If Mavididi was a £20 million winger, he'd probably be that much better and that much more consistent. And so maybe it's going to end out maybe what we thought he would be, where, like I say, he's a player that will end up leaving Leicester and then relishing and doing well for a team that's like right now pushing to get promoted from the Championship. And that's, obviously that's not fine for us. We'd prefer better, but I just think I'm being realistic in saying what it is, right? That's what it is. The top wingers go for a lot of money. It's rare that you find a player for $8.5 million and they're going to be like 10 goals and 10 assists in the Premier League for that amount of money. Because if you can pull those sort of players, not even Brighton pull players like that for that sort of money. Look at how much some of the other wingers in the league, like look at Yakuba Minta, who scored that really good goal against us last week. He cost 35 million, by the way, right? So yeah, that's what we're kind of playing at. So I think, like I say, he's probably performing as expected, but we were hopeful that maybe with that season behind him, he'd be performing better.
Yeah, I think it was you, Kate, as well, wasn't it? Who messaged me in the week about Minter. You said that people would call him a gem, and it was like, well, he cost 35 million, so he's not really a gem, is he?
No, he's not a hidden diamond in the rough, is he? For 30 million quid.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, just to be clear, there, I'm not having a go at Steffi. The question was, should Buonanotte not have started? And the answer to that was no. Was we don't know, because I don't think it would have impacted at all. But Steffi took his place. I would prefer Bilal on the left and Buonanotte in more central. And I just think, based on yesterday, because I think there was a few periods during the first half where we had a bit of a phase of play and building up a bit of momentum. And I don't know whether you felt it watching it, but you were just like, get it in the box, get it in the box, get it in the box. And a large part of that was Steffi. And I used the word impotent yesterday on Twitter. Like, that's what it felt like. He didn't have when you look at Gordon, he's so direct. He takes his man on. You've got to hack him down or get the ball off him, one or the other. With Steffi, it was just like, okay, so now what are you going to do? Now what are you going to do? And he didn't do anything. That he didn't really whip it into the box. He didn't have that direct gumption to take his full back on. And that's what he's there for. And he just seemed a bit redundant yesterday because he wasn't willing to push forward in the few moments that we had the chance to do so.
Yeah, I still find it wild that on the channel last week there were Mavididi over Barnes discussions, and I was like, oh, come on. No, I won't go there again. But no, the chat is very much split. There's people saying even in the Championship, Mavididi wasn't consistent and was also lazy, but he got his crucial points with moments of magic. Somebody else said, guaranteed if you give Steffi a run of games, he will get going. I'm not sure. I
don't think the word guaranteed can be used there, with all due respect. Like, it's not a guarantee. It's, you've got to take your chance when you get it, because that's sport. And if you don't take your chance, then you're going to be left on the reserve bench for a while.
And I think it's probably one of the most common things in football that players make impacts off the bench, but then when they're given a start, they don't do anything with it. And I think that's probably what separates
I made a career out of it.
Yeah, literally, yeah. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's not me. It is what happened at half time. We were sat on the watch along, me, Luke, Neil, and Danil, talking about what substitutions. I think Facundo Buonanotte was the one we were all talking about. And as we lift our heads up and look towards the screen, we see Danny Ward coming on. Where do I start with this one? Kate, how much is it down to, the capitulation is down to maybe Danny Ward's positioning or lack of saves for those goals, and how much of it is down to, I don't know, was it maybe the defenders, the confidence just being sucked up? I don't know. It was just so weird. Kate, talk to me on the whole situation, because I don't know what to say.
Well, this is going to sound funny, but I sound really old granny when I say this, but the music was so loud at St James's Park at the end of the half-time period. I didn't realise Danny Ward had come on. It was so loud, and the guy announced something, and I thought it was just the start of the second half. Then Danny Ward's like right in like our end, and obviously you're flipping as high as an air balloon in that Newcastle. I'm like, is that Danny Ward? Like, I was like, he's got number 1 on his back. I think it's Danny Ward. So that makes me feel like an old granny. But I heard a couple of guys say, why is Ward on? Because I think we all just missed the announcement. But I think it's quite unfair. I'm seeing a lot of chat about it all hanging on Danny Ward a little bit. But some of those moments where they broke through our lines and just got so easily at our defence cannot be on Danny Ward. I don't go with it. I understand if for a number of games or even for the whole of the first half, he gave you an uneasy feel or he didn't make saves that he should. But he'd literally just come on. They scored on 46, 47 minutes. There's absolutely nothing to do with him at that point in terms of how that makes the defence feel. And Yannick and Cody are better than to let a below average goalkeeper affect their play. But I do think for goal 4, it went through his legs. Would Mads have saved it? Possibly. But when I've watched it back this morning, I've only watched it back the once, but I think a lot of the capitulation just happened in the middle of the park because there was no middle of the park for us. But I understand the context that having a non-Mads keeper in between the sticks doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence. But similarly, these guys will work with Danny every day and know that there's a half decent keeper in there because he's got to where he is. He's just so rusty now. We want to get rid of him, but you can't. So, yeah, I understand the sentiment that it can make your defence feel rocky, but this is in the first 15 minutes of him coming on. I think that's letting the others off too lightly, to be honest.
Well, I mean, Anil, I'm in the middle of what Kate just said. So I'm not blaming Ward. I'm blaming the defenders. But I genuinely believe that Ward coming on led to the capitulation. And I think it is mentally. I think we've got a bunch of mentality midgets on our hands in our team. And I genuinely think I don't think if Hermansen comes out with that second half, I don't think we lose that game 4-0. I'm not saying it's Ward's fault, but I'm saying I don't think we lose 4-0. I think Hermansen would have saved a couple of them. And I mean, there's a comment here about the header. Yes, it was point blank, but he was in the wrong position to start with.
Yes.
He was on the other side of the goal.
Yeah.
And then Chip says, shouldn't having Ward in goal make you better centre back knowing you've got no goalkeeper. I mean, Anil, talk to me on the whole Danny Ward situation, because I did think it played a part mentally, and but that's on the players, that's on the outfield players, not Ward.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B, because if you look at his positioning for all the goals, it's pretty awful, to be honest with you. He's literally standing sort of nowhere. That said, even if he was standing in the correct place, would he have stopped the goal? Probably not. So I think there's a lot of sort of blame that can be put both ways. But I mean, it was absolute panic stations. That's the problem. I think the first one was bad enough, but I think the next one, which we can see just 2 minutes afterwards, and you can literally just see that everyone in that back line is absolutely bricking it. They don't know what to do. And that's the thing, is like a good goalkeeper provides that calm. Now, to be fair, Danny Ward, when he came on, I don't know if you saw it on the close-ups, but he looked really, really nervous, because I think he knew that he's got this monkey on his back and he's trying to like stop it. And 2 goals after 3 minutes, he knows what's going to happen online. He's going to get absolutely rinsed. But when he's been stealing a wage at Leicester for a long time, so I don't really feel that much sympathy. But yeah, look, I sort of agree with both. I think that, like, ultimately, I think when you look at it, when I do it in the analysis, defensively, we were very poor and also quite naive. I think especially after conceding the goal right after half time, the next thing we needed to do is just stay in the game for a few minutes, and we just push up and leave gaps behind, and then it's just game over. And, you know, you're coming out at half time thinking, oh, maybe it's going to be tough, but we could get something here. Okay, it's game over, right? So that was horrific. But equally, Danny Ward himself, that you can see that he's not a top keeper because he's not got that commanding authority, that presence in the box. He's not able, because you as a goalkeeper, you can recognize that as well, right? And organize your defense and be vocal. And I think that Mads is quite good at doing that at times. I've seen sometimes in games when we've been heavily under the cosh that he is like quite active and telling people what to do. And in the next sort of minute or two, we actually do regain a little bit of composure. Like, I think Arsenal was a good example of that, actually. It was just basically 90 minutes of Arsenal shooting at our goal. But there were periods where I feel like Mads made a great save and then sort of calmed it, which is really good for a youngster. So, look, I mean, as you said, it's the elephant in the room. And that's if Danny Ward starts games for us, I mean, unfortunately, I only see them going one way. And even if you can say, oh, it's not all his fault. But I mean, if the net result of that is that we play worse because his players don't trust in him, and you can't start with him in goal. And that's what it looked to be the case there. But yeah, we cannot let the defenders get away with it. Like Victor Christensen and Connor Cody were absolutely bobbins for 3 of those, well, all the second half goals. They just completely switched off, didn't know what was going on, and it was just way too easy for Newcastle. I do just think quickly before I pass back to you, though, that we're not giving Newcastle enough credit. Like, we were bad, but the way that they play is they make us look bad because they're this super high intensity team that try and press you right from the top. Like, even Pep says he hates playing Newcastle because it's like, if their strategy works, it just makes you look, pound shop. Whereas compared to other teams, it can be a bit more like, say Brighton are way higher in the table than Newcastle.
Yeah.
But Brighton, no time in the game did they look anywhere near as good as Newcastle. Whereas Newcastle, first 5 minutes aside, after that, they just got completely on top of us, used the crowd to their advantage and just penned us in, and they caused that panic. And that's why we capitulated. But that lack of leadership and experience, I think, is a real big worry.
Yeah, I think Justin is going to be having nightmares of Gordon. Cody and Vestergaard will be having nightmares of Isak, and even Christiansen will be having nightmares of Murphy. Was it Murphy? Murphy, isn't it? So I just saw a comment here as well, by the way. Camo said his distribution was crap, just booted the ball out and put pressure on us. But then Richie makes a good point. I mean, that's been happening quite a bit with Hermansen as well, which is why we've been conceding a lot of chances. Just last thing on Ward, guys. I saw this image last night on Twitter, and it made me laugh so much, so I've got to bring it up. The power of the internet. This was for one of the, I can't remember which goal it was that went between his legs, but this is what someone did, getting creative on Twitter, which I found rather funny. So there we go. I just had to bring that up. There was a comment here, so I want to bring this up. So Richie says, worst performance this season. If that would have been under Cooper, everyone would be losing their mind. I honestly think there will be a massive reaction against Wolves, but let's call a spadina.
I think he means
a spade.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry. It's too early for me. Too early for me. Obviously, on the situation of the goalkeeper, I mean, Anil was just talking about it there, Kate, but what if we've lost Hermansen for any period of time, it's going to be a massive blow, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'd say without doubt him and Vardy are the 2 linchpins of the team at the moment, unfortunately. So without Mads, it's going to be very, very difficult, I think. But like I tried to say yesterday on Twitter as well, like, the positive is that we're not going to get relegated because we've lost at St James's Park, because we don't really win at St James's Park. It's all on Wolves next weekend, really. It's a massive game. I really hope Gary O'Neill's still in a job. But yeah, Mads, without Mads, I'm hoping that he's come off. He's just felt it tighten up a bit. I think it's a quad or something, or groin or something, he said. And he'll just nurse it back. He's got a full week now to recover and hopefully be on the mend. And I'm hoping, even if he's 80%, you just do it as a goalkeeper. It's not like we're asking him to sub out Hamza, is it? So we just need him to be 80%. That would be okay. I've seen their question, is Stolicic fit? I think he's just back into full training. So obviously he's had a really serious hand-wrist injury. I think he broke it, didn't he? So that might be something for a month down the line, but I still think it's too early for Jakob.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying last night, I actually do like Jakob. And I think that last season, when he was asked to come in every single time, he did a great job. And he's not as good, I suppose, as Hermansen with regards to his feet, but he can still do it. And he's definitely better than Ward and Daniel Iversen. Would you have Iversen over Ward, both of you? I'm guessing so, if Hermansen isn't fit.
Yeah, but isn't he on loan at Stoke?
No, he's back. Oh. That was last year. Yeah, last season,
okay.
Yeah. Which is the weirdest part. That's the weirdest part, because he's at the club, and as far as we're aware, he's fit. But Danny Ward's been on the bench every single game.
Yeah, I don't know then.
Maybe that's Cooper, his Welsh mate, had him on the bench all season.
Well, but Rude's done it as well. He's kept him for all 3 games. So, maybe he's going to realise that wasn't the best mistake. I mean, because the thing is as well, why that's weird is because you never see Danny Ward actually play it out with his feet. So the thing is, you can't even say if he's good with his feet or not. I literally cannot remember ever with Leicester, Danny Ward doing anything like Mads has done. At least with Stolarczyk, I can remember it. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as Mads at doing it, but Stolarczyk played against Bournemouth away in the FA Cup last season where we won and beat them. And he was okay. He had some rough moments. I'll be honest with you, I don't think he's ready for the Premier League. I think it would be a bad idea to throw him in. I just think he's another one that probably needs to spell in the Championship. Just assure yourself as being like a Championship number one, then you can come to the Premier League. But that's why I think Iversen could do a job, because Iversen, he's been on loan at Preston. They wanted to sign him, but didn't. He's been on loan at Stoke. So he's used to being like the number one and playing for like 6 months at a time and handling it. And yeah, I guess we can't play out from the back as much with him. But I mean, with Danny Ward, it's just an accident waiting to happen, as we saw yesterday.
I remember the season we got relegated against Brighton. Ward that was the one where him and Ndidi nearly had a scrap, like on the pitch.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I asked a question the other day actually on the channel who would win in a fight, Ndidi or Ward. Everybody said Ndidi, but I think Ward would have.
I think Ward, absolutely,
yeah.
Ward's doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Manny would say Ndidi. Definitely.
I think the data suggests that Ndidi would win it personally, and I'm a data guy, as you know. So
Manny would have him win against Roy Keane as well, but
yeah. Right. Obviously, it was a game where Vardy's dreams of breaking his own record were ended, unfortunately. Salah's were as well. So there's a plus. Here we are. I knew he was in there somewhere. Look at it. It's so easy to fish him out. He was in there and he weren't commenting and he was just there. There he is. Nice to see it. Good morning to you, Manny. Yeah, Vardy didn't score. I don't think we really blame him, but do you think now maybe, Kate, there's maybe an excuse for Ruud to throw in his good mate Daka, who he clearly is quite a big fan of? Do you think he might play Daka against Wolves?
No chance. Absolutely no chance.
Why not?
I don't think he brings to the game what Vardy brings to the game in terms of his ball play, his ability to hold up the ball, his offloading, his passing, his moves on the transition to come deep and get it and lay it off. Like Daka's pass completion is probably quite poor if you looked at the stats. So Daka looked like old Daka yesterday. And I'm not necessarily having a go at him for that, because there was absolutely nothing going on at that end of the pitch at all. But he didn't really add anything, did he? So Vardy was brought off to save him for next Saturday. Next Sunday, sorry. So, he's not there for me. I mean, we've seen a little spark of Daka, but we need a hell of a lot more to light the fire, I think.
Now that the honeymoon period is officially over, it lasted 2 games. So hey, I'll tell you what, it's more than we got under Cooper, that's for sure.
Vardy can do a backflip, by the way, Clemo.
He
did it against Everton at Goodison Park.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not sure about now though, Kate. That was a good few years back. That was. I'm not sure now. Maybe after a Red Bull or 2. No, the honeymoon period is over. So now whatever happens, we know is down to Ruud. You know, what does Ruud need to do, Anil, over these next few days to pick those players up and get them ready for Wolves? Because as Kate said, I mean, I think we're all just hoping and praying Gary O'Neill is still there. They look like they're worse in terms of things going on behind the scenes and all of that, like below what we were in the Rodgers season, the relegation season. Like, they look a true mess. I mean, Lamina got into a scrap after the game last week, got his captaincy pulled off him. Now, Ait Nouri, who's their best player by far, he's now also been suspended after getting into a scrap. So they're a real mess. So what can Ruud do this week to get them ready for Wolves?
It's an interesting one, because I wonder if he's going to go in on them hard or he's going to be a bit sympathetic. There were like some rumors that when he first came in, because he'd just seen the Brentford game, that he said to them that wasn't good enough and they really needed to up their performances. But the thing is, if anything, you need to tell them exactly the same thing again. And that's just in 4 games, they've done it twice, 50% strike record. So what do you do? At the same time, this is an absolutely huge game. And, you know, we need to be going into it confident, not nervous. You need to sort of raise the morale, I guess, but I don't know how you can do that when you're going to sit back and watch that game and see how poor it is. I know, I'm a bit baffled really how I would go about doing it. I think you've got to make changes in that back line, because the leaders kind of really let themselves down there. you got to be solid, I think, at the back at minimum against that game against Wolves. I think the thing that I don't know worried me a bit is there were a lot of moments where it cut to Ruud on the sideline and he just looked absolutely shell-shocked. And sometimes those moments were even when it was just 1-0. So, like he'd really realized the magnitude of what was he had to do here. I do think in his head, he will be thinking that maybe he was only thinking of signing, let's say, 1 or 2 players. And he's like, Christ almighty, I need to write a letter to Uncle Top and tell him that, like, dear Top, I've been a very good manager, and for Christmas, I would like 2 centre-backs, a right-back, and the keeper on loan if Mads Hermansen is injured. Because honestly, I think that's the only way that we can resolve it. But for this game, I think just really work on the back line, tell them that they've got to concentrate, really work on the positioning. The worrying thing is he said he had 6 days of the team and they were working on a lot of things, especially in the defensive phase of the game, and it just completely fell apart. And that's got to just drive him mad. That's probably why he was shell-shocked. He's like, did these guys not listen to a single word I said in the last week? And clearly they didn't, or they've forgotten it. Do you double down on that? You probably have to. As you say, the one good piece of news is Wolves seem to be in even more disarray than we are. But here's a worry for you. The underlying metrics say that we're the much worse team than Wolves. So, that's very nervous to realise that.
Is that even taking into account the data from Brighton and West Ham then?
Well, if you look at it across the season, the 3 teams that are conceding the most chances and goals are the 3 teams that got promoted. And then there's quite a big jump before it gets to Wolves. And Wolves themselves have been awful. They're conceding a lot of goals, but I guess they're not conceding as many. They're not offering as many shots, because the problem is not only did we lose 4-0 to Newcastle, but let's be honest, it could have been much worse. Isak was through 1-on-1. Murphy missed a bit of a sitter in the first half there as well. So, I mean, honestly, if that game would have ended 6-0, could you complain? You couldn't. And they took their foot off the gas about 60, 65 minutes. They absolutely battered us as we completely fell apart. So, as a worry. I mean, as Kate says, though, that game's not going to define our season. So, yeah, maybe if you're rude, you just say, okay, forget that happened. Let's concentrate. Let's get back to it. We did actually show some good stuff in the previous 2 games. And most importantly, we were at home. So there's something we can do to fix it. But I think who are we even going to play? It is a bit walking wounded out there. And we do need some of that. At least we know Samare's back. So at least there's going to be one person who's been playing in kind of decent form that will be back for that game. But I feel like, so indeed he's not going to make it, is he? Will Winks? I think that double pivot's a huge problem. We need more experience in there.
I like I used to like Eddie Howe and his little shadow buddy Tyndall. But is that his name? Tyndall? Is that his name? Tyndall? What's his name?
Mike Tyndall, is it? Maybe.
No, Mike Tyndall's the old rugby player who's married to
Jason.
Oh,
Jason right. Tyndall. Jason Tyndall, right?
Yeah, it's Jason Tyndall.
However, after the 4th, he brings on Harvey Barnes. I thought, what a dick move that is. Luckily, Barnes was off the right, and we know he's not great there. And every time he had a shot, he just sent it down the middle. Danny Ward caught it, thank God. So, Kate, I'll ask you something similar, though, about what Ruud needs to do. I mean, I listened to his interview after the game, and he didn't really go in. And I think he has said previously he doesn't go in on his players to the media. Do you think he would have gone in on them in the dressing room after the game? And do you think he'll do the same? Do you think he's pulled them in first thing this morning?
Yeah, I think he probably will have done. I don't think he's a guy to lose his temper. He's just that sort of, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed type of thing, which is probably, I hope, more disappointing for the players to hear, that he's asked them to do something. He's had a game plan and it clearly hasn't been executed very well at all. But similarly, he'll have to do a bit of looking at himself. Like, we've said about the midfield, there have got to be other options than that, because we know the limitations of Hamza in particular. And Hamza was a lot of the reasons why any kind of turnover of possession we achieved, it came straight back to us, because Hamza's passing was just so poor. Like, he tried to pass forward, but his ability just isn't there. So he'll have to do a bit of soul searching himself, I think, for next weekend, to see if we've not got Wilf still, what he's going to do with that. But I think Samare and Skip could do it. Hopefully Winks is back. I do hope Winks is back, and I'm hoping he will be. So maybe that's the combination to go for.
Is there enough legs there?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's got to be. Well, there's got to be. This is the thing. There's no choice. There's no option.
We should be a bit better in that one, because I think yesterday it really showed how we missed Ndidi, but that's because the way that Newcastle play, because they're sort of so athletic and physical, you can see that Joe Linton just absolutely bullied the midfield, which was always going to be the case. Like, the only hope was that Hamza could somehow match that and put one of his better displays in. But I think against Wolves, even though Ndidi's still a big miss, because I gave you that stat in the post-match yesterday that between Skip and Chowdhury, they only won one tackle all afternoon, which is ridiculous, because Wilfred Ndidi's had games where he's won 10 tackles by himself. But I think luckily the way that Wolves play, whilst we need to be more physical than we were against Newcastle, it won't be one of those games where we need an absolute tackling machine in there. So I think actually if we were to play Winks and Samare, we should still have a good chance. But I think my worry is that is Winks back? If he's not, we know indeed he's not going to be back, then, you know, God, I mean, look, did you see, Kate, that by 60th minute, Connor Cody was playing as a central defensive midfielder? I mean, you're not going to get anything out of any game if that's where we are. But what can you do?
Also,
I mean,
it was interesting he used Victor in the 3. And Victor absolutely did not know which end was up being in that 3. I mean, yeah, that is a tried and failed experiment and should never see the light of day ever again.
Thoughts on this, Anil? As I said a while ago, you have to earn the right to you have to earn the right to play. If you can't challenge or win it in the first place, what's the point of superior passing?
Well, I've said it, that you saw literally the evidence of that yesterday, that like literally Joe Linton overran our entire midfield, which meant we could never get going. So it is important that you have someone in there. At the same time, ideally, you'd have a player that can both win it back and play with the ball. But I always suspected going into this game that missing those particular 2, if there was ever a game you didn't want them missing for, that was the game. Because like I say, the way they play is they play this like high intensity, high press. You've got to be competitive and win those challenges. And, you know, if you can ride it out, then you've got a platform to build on. And that's why we were just so bad, because basically we just could never do that the whole entire game. And so, yeah, it was just curtains as soon as the game started, really, even if it took them a little while. But I felt Newcastle, even as soon as it got to sort of 10 minutes in, that was a spell where Anthony Gordon started making magic happen. And I was like, oh God, if I think I said to the guys, I feel like this game's just got a Newcastle going to win. It's just a matter of when all over it. And then unfortunately we capitulated. But, you know, that's the thing. Do you know what I mean? That sometimes you can just see how the game's going to play out and it doesn't really change. Whereas, say against Brighton, conversely, we started that game thinking we're playing quite well here. You know, I think we really got a good chance of getting it. So we need to fix that. But yeah, you know, the thing with the Wolves, I don't know if you saw the highlights of that game against Ipswich, it looked like a real kind of clown fiesta match with both teams low on confidence. So I'm just hopeful that we have a bit more confidence, even though this has been a bad result, because we had previously 2 good performances at home.
Yeah. Kate, Manny says also 2 set pieces conceded yesterday. Our midfield had the height of Oompa-Loompas. I mean, there's no doubt about that, right? That obviously, indeed, he does bring. I know you're not his biggest fan, but he does bring a lot to the team. He does, and it was a big miss, especially when Hamza, who, you know, I suppose was meant to be his like-for-like replacement. I mean, what was the stat you brought out yesterday, Neil? Like one attempted tackle or something. I mean, that's pathetic.
Between him and Skip, they only made one challenge, one
yeah,
tackle.
We were both in space all the time, nowhere near anybody. That was the problem. But yeah, I mean, I understand Manny's point, but I don't know what he expects us to do, because we were down to the bare bones. You take the best middle 3 out of any team in Winks, Mare, and Wilf, it's gonna look a shadow of itself. And 2 of those 3 happen to be probably over 6'2", 6'3", I would imagine. That's just circumstance. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about circumstance. Similarly, there's nothing you can do about having Danny Ward on the bench and Mads gets injured. He's coming on. So, but for me, the point that Manny raised about you have to earn the right to play, that's not always the case, because Ward's not earned the right to play. And if you can't challenge or win it in the first place, what's the point in superior passing? Hamza's not just there to tackle and pass. Sometimes, and a lot of the time yesterday, Hamza had a fair bit of the ball. And that wasn't because he tackled, as the stats say. It's because the ball came to him. So when the ball comes to you, it is your job as a Premier League footballer, which year on year gets more unforgiving, that if you cannot pass the football, you will get found out and you will look Championship or League One. And that's what happens with Hamza. So it's not the point of if you can't challenge or win it in the first place. It's if you get the football, there is no or little margin for error in you making a poor pass anymore in the Premier League. There's nothing.
Because you give it away,
tackle,
and then you may as well have...
Those days are gone. You've got to be a ball player, particularly in that key part of the pitch, especially for teams like Leicester who don't see a lot of the ball. If you don't use the 20 or 30% of possession that you've got wisely, you're going to get thumped. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Because I suppose if you win the ball and give it away, you may as well have not won it in the first place, because you just turn it over and they come
like
again.
A lot of the time it came to Hamza, like he was perhaps intercepted it or whatever. You've still got to make the pass right, even if it's a short yard pass or whatever. He tried some forward play, and I don't think any was successful. And that's why we just desperately need some squad depth in that area.
Yeah, I was really disappointed, because I think I said to you before, like, I think I said to Luca and Il that, every time last season, for example, in the Championship, when he was called upon, I think he did well. And I think he's done well quite a lot, just in general at Leicester, not just in the Championship, in the Premier League in the past when he's come in. But, I mean, just quickly, just to finish the discussion off with the midfielders, Hamza Chowdhury versus Newcastle, 0 tackles attempted, 0-1. 3 ground duels contested, 1 of them he won. 0 aerial duels. And then on the flip side, Skip, 1 tackle attempted, 0-1. 2 ground duels, 1-1. And 1 aerial duel contested, 1-1. So from both of them, it was a pathetic performance, to be honest with you. Finally, let's end it on this. Ruud can use yesterday to demonstrate to the board why we need help. Can't afford to lose key players in significant numbers. Now, I saw a tweet yesterday. It's from a relatively big Twitter account. I don't know who they are exactly. It was in a different language, like 500,000 followers. Apparently, they reported that Leicester are going to have £150 million to spend in January. Now, I don't know how we do that without breaching PSR. So unless the club are willing to spend it, to breach PSR to stay up, I don't know. But will that keep us up? Will that be it? What do you think to that, Anil? What do you think to that report? £150 million in January. Do you think it's feasible? Do you think it sounds about right?
Well, the thing is what you can do, because it's a new accounting period, is you can, going to get all technical here, you can amortize those deals, right? So if all those players are coming on a 5-year deal, then you're actually spreading the cost out over 5 years. So I guess in what's happening in the Premier League at the moment is kind of interesting. Different teams are choosing what period to do it. But basically what they do is they say, okay, now's the time when we're going for it. We're going to massively overhaul our squad and make it competitive. And then that team all of a sudden starts pumping up the league for a few seasons. And then 3 or 4 years later, they get to the point where there's no more money left in the tank. And then they start plummeting a bit. Look at Newcastle as an example, right? They invested heavily in their team, got all these amazing players like Isak and Gordon. But now in the summer, because PSR is a big issue, they actually had to sell some of their best players in Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minteh, which is why this season they plummeted down the league a little bit. So I guess on paper, it is possible that we could do something like that if we want to go hard, that we decide, okay, we're going to front load the investment now and try and get loads of players in right now and use that to keep us up this season and make us competitive for the next 2 or 3 seasons and essentially kick the can down the road. And let's worry about the 28-29 season when we get there, because who knows what's going to happen about that. So maybe something like that could happen. I do think we're in big problems, though, because it's like, I mean, we do need it. I think we've been very unfortunate with injuries. We're not the only team in the league to have injury problems, but I think if we're a team that's got promoted, if you're missing yesterday, Ndidi, Winks, Ricardo, Fatawu, then Mads Manson goes off injured, that's 5 players who are probably in the starting lineup. If you're a team that's just got promoted, you're going to be struggling, I think, in that case. So we've got to have, I think, some sort of depth. So look, I can't see us spending 150, especially in the January window where it's notoriously worse, just because we've never done anything like that. But I could see us getting 3 players or something like that. And I think if you get 3 solid players, it probably would make a big difference, because down in that bottom 5 or 6, look, we were awful yesterday, and yet we're still not in the relegation zone. And we're still, there's basically 5 or 6 teams that are basically not, I don't even think if it's fair even say they're not very good. They're just not as good as the teams that are above them, right? So we're in a mini league, and we just need to make sure that we're on the top side of that mini league and not in the bottom side. And yeah, 2 like real moments of quality could be the difference between staying up, and I think we've got to go for it. And I think Top will do it. He's seen it. Like, if we go down, it's just going to put us even further back. So I think you do have to invest. So I think we're going to spend, but not 150. No.
Kate, yeah, I mean, even if we did have a lot of money to spend, it's just important we spend it right, isn't it? Because, I mean, you look at the year we went down under Rodgers, we brought in 3 players, Tete, Suter, and Christiansen. And I mean, well, whatever you want to say about the players, it didn't keep us up, did it? So, and if anything, I mean, we got worse. So how important is it we spend it right? Because do you trust the current recruitment, not even the recruitment team, but the decision makers to bring in the right players? I mean, surely Rude's going to have a big say, because we're led to believe that Cooper had a big say on some of the players that came in the summer. Skip, Ayew, Deco, Reed, for players like that. So yeah, how important do you think it is that Rude has the say on the players that come in January?
I feel like the manager always does have the say with Leicester. Obviously, they don't have any control over the money spent and the wages paid. That isn't on them, and that's to do with the football director and the recruitment policy with the seeding club, and whatever they want to charge. The problem is in January is that the premium is heavily loaded, probably by about 20%. And it's a really horrible market if you really need some things on your shopping list. And January is notoriously difficult for that, for obvious reasons. But I do think that we are going to be spending money, because if we don't spend money, even if it's a considerable amount that could arguably breach financial fair play, then you are at risk of getting relegated, and the EFL are just waiting for us. So you're in trouble no matter what you do. You're stuck in a corner, and I would just say go for it. I think one thing that will be in consideration, and it would not surprise me if Enzo and Chelsea have already agreed a deal to sign Hermansen in the summer. It honestly wouldn't surprise me. And if we can get anything over 50, 60 million for Hermansen, that will be brought in and factored in. These things happen, and those things are set in place, and there's forward thinking in terms of the money coming in and coming out. They're probably the next 12 to 18 months in terms of what big asset can we sell, because that's always been Leicester's model that's proven successful. So whilst I understand people's frustrations at the recruitment, but also there's not enough said about sometimes the things that we do get right. You know, this same recruitment have recruited Mads, they've recruited Fatawu, they've recruited Samare, who's took a while to get going, but he's getting going. Like, they've recruited Winks, who was unbelievable last year. Like, you can't just always dwell on the bad stuff, as you'll constantly be depressed. So you've got to say, we've got to trust them, because they are where they are. They're staying here. We've got no influence over that. But I do think we need to have that one good sale a summer to keep the model going and to keep financial fair play at bay a bit, really, or PSL.
So I guess that's Hermansen short term, and then who's the next one going to be? El Canoes, the next big sale, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, but that's the model we have, isn't it?
Of course he is. I mean, he's not going to want to stay at Leicester for a long time either. I think he was pushing for the move because he was like, yeah, I can go to Leicester, keep him up, and I might even get a move in the summer. He's probably thinking, I think that's a bit optimistic, but he'll only be around 2 or 3 seasons at max, you'd have thought anyway. But that's okay.
And that's who we are.
Yeah.
That's who we are.
And that's what's worked in the past historically. It's just things like not being able to sell Yuri, some players sitting out their contracts. Like, as much as people hate the fact that Ward is still in contract, it's unbelievable to me that he's only like early 30s. I feel like he should be 57, but he
plays like it.
But what can you do? These players' contracts are watertight, and they're there to protect them. On the good side, against long-term injury, you can pay them out the contract. But on the bad side is when you have players like Ward that you just want to get rid of, or Ryan Bertrand, you know, those types of players that just drain your resources, and then they end up going on the Bosman. And it's really quite difficult to work around.
Yeah, but the thing is that's because we're too generous on those wages. That's why we got those players. Like, other teams, they give it like more performance-based. Like, so one of the reasons why we got players like Maddison and Tielemans is that at the time, like, a mid-table club might only offer players like that 40,000 a week, and we're like, here's 60,000, here's 70,000. That's why we're getting into those PSR problems. And I think in some ways that did work, because we definitely got players like Ricardo, Tielemans, Maddison, who were like, wow, these are players that are probably good enough for a top 4 team, and they're here at Leicester. But it's like, when you make one of those signings and it doesn't work out, as you mentioned, Ryan Bertrand or Danny Ward's another good example, then you've got these players on huge wages, and that's why we can't shift them, because they're on so much. Because, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, I bet I could go and play for another bottom 5 Premier League team, but they're only going to offer me 30 grand a week, whereas I can sit here doing nothing on my Leicester contract and get paid 70k. Ooh,
but to be fair, like we said to them, we'll pay you this amount of wages, which was 7th highest in the league at the time. But we did finish 8th in the year that we were doing a lot of this, and we were playing European football fairly frequently. So if you say we'll pay you this, but you're going to get guaranteed European football, like there's a lot of swinging of the pendulum, isn't there, in terms of negotiations? It's just really difficult if it goes wrong and if players don't move. But yeah, Danny Ward is the new Jack Rodwell.
It's mental, in it. Yeah, it's meant. I mean, his contract does expire in June, so we can be thankful of that. Somebody gave him a new deal in 2021, although that was before the relegation season. So, you know, yeah, we didn't know how bad he really was. But all right, then. Well, that is the end of today's Bad Morning Foxes. Thanks to everybody in the chat, and yeah, who's been getting all their opinions on. Obviously, thanks to Anil as well. Kate, tell people where they can find you to get some of your great footballing opinions.
I'm on Twitter at Kate Blakey40. I also do Leicester Till I Die once a week. I do some BBC stuff as well. Yeah, so find me here, there, and everywhere. Really, just floating about.
Lovely stuff. Anil, I believe we have the live call-in show tomorrow at 7 p.m. So it won't be as happy as last Monday. It'll be interesting what some people come and say.
How many rude outers do you think we'll have?
Oh, none yet. Come on.
Yeah.
Hopefully
so
not.
I think we'll see how many it takes before something like that happens. Because I've already seen it in chat. There's a few people that are like, told ya.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. And everybody enjoy your Sundays. As I said, thanks for all your comments. We hit 8,000 subscribers overnight, by the way. Yeah, crazy. So thank you.
Every silver cloud has its lining locks.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks to every single one of you. 8,000 subscribers, very much appreciated. There's the Blue Tinted Glasses. There we go. Cheers all. Enjoy your Sunday. Try and forget about the football, and we'll see you tomorrow night on the live corner show. Bye-bye.